Ding Liren is now the 17th World Chess Champion, and he accomplished this in the most roller coaster ride of a journey you can possibly imagine. There were 7 decisive games in the World Chess Championship match. However, if we go back in history, Ding had a 100-game streak where he was unbeatable. From August 2017 until November of 2018, he had 29 wins, 71 draws, and 0 losses in classical chess. During this stretch, he played one of the most beautiful and absolutely destructive games of chess ever played, and many now call it his Immortal Game. Let's check it out. This game occurs in November of 2017 in the Chinese Chess League. Ding Liren, playing with the black pieces, plays the Nimzo Indian defense, bishop b4 to pin the knight to the king so the knight's not exerting as much control over the central squares. And white actually does something similar in this game, bishop g5 to pin the knight to black's queen. And after that, we see c5. And in a lot of openings where d4 is played, c5 is very common because it is trying to break up the center without committing one of black's central pawns. So we see e3 to reinforce the center. After it takes, white makes an interesting decision. Instead of taking back with the e-pawn, they take back with the queen, which is a little bit counterintuitive because it allows black to improve their position with knight c6 and with tempo. So white has to respond to this. They move their queen back, and now black plays h6. The bishop can either take or go back. White decides to go back, and now we get d5 to strike in the center. Rook d1 is played, lining up a powerful queen-rook battery along the file that may or may not open in the near future, and then we see g5. After g5, you might notice, wait, aren't black's kingside pawns very far extended? Isn't that a potential weakness? Well, it's only a weakness if white can prove it to be a weakness. There's not really a big attack right now, so Ding is totally fine, and he plays knight e4. After the knight goes back, he moves his knight again to attack this queen with tempo. The queen moves out of the way. Ding decides now is the time to strike in the center, d4. After knight f3, things go crazy because Ding plays e5. You might be wondering, wait, there are 2 pieces attacking e5. Ding is only defending it once. What is going on? Well, Ding is completely sacrificing a pawn after knight takes e5. He does not take the knight back. He takes the knight on c3. And you're like, whoa, is Ding Liren blundering his queen away? Because rook takes d8 is played. How can you not accept the queen? But now c takes b2 is a discovered check. And here white plays king e2. And this is a mistake. The only move to keep equality is rook d2. And you might think, well, yeah, didn't you just win a queen and you just go back, right? But it can be very hard to just walk into a pin like that. And black would immediately follow up with rook d8. The computer sees this crazy line where white is desperately trying to hang on to this rook. So you see knight f3, but black's trying to remove the defender. So they play bishop g4 with plans to take the knight. White takes the b-pawn, so the b-pawn's not ever threatening to promote. And then we see takes, and takes, and all of a sudden you look at the simplification. 2 minor pieces in a rook versus 2 minor pieces in a rook, and basically white is up a pawn, but it's a double pawn, so it's a little bit of a messy endgame, but it is relatively even. If the 2 players played through that whole thing, they're more machine than they are human. So instead, of course, this is why we saw king e2. And after the rook gets captured, we see the b-pawn fall as well, so it's not a future threat. But now we see knight a4 hitting the queen with tempo. The queen moves out of the way, and we see a check with a knight. You don't want to walk onto the dark squares, allowing black to have a discovered check with the bishop, so the king moves to f3. And anytime the king is just getting hunted into the middle of the board, it can be very dangerous. Especially when Ding Liren uncorks this beautiful move, rook d4.
Wow!
A move with multiple ideas, and first and foremost, we have to consider what happens after the pawn takes. You get hit with a giant fork. The king and the queen are both hit, and then that will be all she wrote. It's GG's after that. So instead, if you try and do anything else, like you get the queen out of the way, well, actually g4 is just checkmate. And you might be wondering, KD, what about this? Knight just takes. And then I'd say, what about this? Bishop takes. Where's your king going? It's checkmate. So for that reason, what white plays is h3, but Ding says, no, h5. I'm still threatening g4. It's a very real threat. Here, white desperately plays bishop h2 to create one extra square for the king, but Ding has no mercy. He plays g4 anyway. And now that the king is safely on the g3 square, look at the pieces. You have a rook in jail. You have a bishop in jail. White is up material, but where is the material? It's not participating in the game. So Liren is the one with all the initiative. And he plays another brilliant move, rook to d2. Again, here trying to attract the queen into a royal fork. This time I will show the golden fork for Liren. Very, very deserving, getting two royal fork ideas in the same game. Of course, white, again, does not allow us to eat. We don't get to pull the forks out. Instead, what we see is queen to b3. But now, after this, we do see a knight check. The king moves to h4. We see a bishop check. The king takes on h5. And now, before I tell you the next move, I have to tell you a story. In the World Championship match, Liren has a team of chess players who are helping him research games, research openings, doing all sorts of things. They have a nickname for Liren. It is Silent Storm. And a move like King G7 is probably why they call him Silent Storm. It is a quiet move that is trying to take away one square from the king. It also reminds me of a move that he played during the actual World Championship match. This was Game 6 against Nepo. Liren in this position with the white pieces played d5. And all the top grandmaster commentators were completely confused by this. What is d5? Like, I don't see the purpose except maybe trying to get this pawn closer to promotion. Well, the idea is that as the game progressed, well, the queen and the knight and the rook were all putting so much pressure, and in this position Nepo resigned. He resigned because after something like queen c3, trying to set up a promotion on a1, Ding's whole idea was that he would just take the rook, force the king onto g8, the rook gives a check, king f7, and rook f8 mate. This pawn is cutting off the last square to complete a mating net. You go back 1 move, 2 moves, 3 moves, 4 moves, 5 moves, 6 moves, 7 moves in advance. Liren played d5, a completely random move to finish a beautiful mating net. Not so dissimilar to what he was trying to do with king g7. To try and protect that h6 square, white plays bishop f4, but now we get bishop f5, allowing the last piece to potentially come into the fray. And after bishop h6 check, just simply king h7, no worries. Queen takes b7. So many pieces are hanging. Ding does not even care. He just takes on f2. I mean, this knight's hanging, and then this bishop would be hanging, this rook's hanging, all sorts of craziness. But look, we got a king on h5. You want to go and attack the king. That's much, much more important. After bishop g5, Ding brings his last piece into the fray, and the whole idea is that he is trying to play king g8 and deliver mate. So for that reason, knight takes on f7, and they're trying to say, okay, well now if you do that, that just doesn't work, right? So Ding first plays bishop g6, which allows the king to take on g4, but it does not matter because he plays knight e5 check. White resigned in this position because you have two options, and they are both terrible. If you move to king h4, then you have an absolutely work of art. King g8, you take the rook, and bishop takes g5. 2 bishops are partaking in this checkmate, 2 knights are partaking in this checkmate, and it is just chef's kiss. Your other option here is that you can take that knight, but that also doesn't work because bishop f5 supported by the rook. Now the king can go to h5, but just simply king g7 or king g8. Both of them look very nice. For example, bishop blocks and this is mate, or even prettier, it would be king g8 and the bishop h6, and then knight to g3. Again, both bishops partaking, the knight delivering the final blow. Just an absolutely stunning finish. I'm sure you already knew that Liren is incredible at chess, but this game is truly a masterpiece, and that is why it is Liren's Immortal Game. If you want to learn more about Ding, then go make sure you check out this video right over here. Happy learning, everyone.